Welcome to Abiding Hysteria, the monthly podcast where women and gender-diverse people tell their health stories, both as patients and providers, to help shed some light on the role that gendered bias plays in medicine. I'm your host, Rachael Woodard. I'm a disabled woman with several chronic illnesses, and that's why I do the show. To hear my story, check out our episode 0. If you'd like to know about upcoming episodes and more, follow us on social media at Abiding Hysteria. For early access to uncut episodes with bonus content such as video versions of some episodes, become a patron today for only $5 a month at patreon.com/abidinghysteria. If you can't become a patron but still want to help these stories get told, though, remember to rate us on your platform of choice, leave a review, leave a comment, and share the show. It really does help others find us and get their stories told as well. If you're interested in becoming part of the Discord that's just starting, DM me on social media or email me at abidinghysteria@gmail.com. I'm looking forward to some fun times on there. As a reminder, this show is for informational purposes only and not a substitute for individual medical advice, and a trigger warning for medical trauma in this episode relating to surgery and pain. My question for you this month is, why do so many people make it their business whether or not we give birth? I'd love to see your comments and start some healthy discourse on the subject. From the ages of 16 to 21, today's guest, Logan Kinch, underwent 7 surgeries during those formative 5 years. After all of that pain and trauma, Logan started her most difficult journey yet, getting a hysterectomy. Although endometriosis was damaging her quality of life and she had no desire to ever have children, bias always got in her way. Please join me in welcoming today's guest, Logan Kinch. Welcome to Abiding Hysteria. I'm Rachael Woodard, your host. You probably just heard that in the intro, but just want to emphasize that. Today, our guest is Logan Kinch, who I found through a story on her TikTok. So, Logan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the show?
Yes, thank you. So, I have a pretty interesting history with my health. I have had 8 surgeries. The first one was a cervical rib removal that I had when I was 16. And that was kind of unrelated to my endometriosis, which was more related to the other ones. But that was a very serious major surgery with like a 2-month recovery. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, there was a lot of, that was a lot to deal with at a young age, but there was things that happened, like I accidentally had like an overdose in the hospital. So what happened was I reacted really badly to, I think it was the morphine, and it made me really itchy, and she put a Benadryl through my IV instead of giving me pills to take, so it pushed all of the morphine in at once, and I OD'd. And they just kept me awake. She got her shift ended and a different nurse came and they were like, "Oh, you look tired, let's take a nap." And that nurse was like, "Hold up." And then I think I was taking like 8 breaths a minute or something. And so they just like sat me up and kept me awake.
That is so scary.
Mm-hmm. As well as when I woke up from that surgery, I woke up a little bit earlier than they were expecting because I had a complication with it where having a cervical rib is pretty rare. It's basically a rib that grows out of your cervical spine. And since it's not supposed to be there, it typically causes problems. In my case, it caused my entire right arm to go numb very frequently. So,
wow. Yeah, for those who don't know, cervical spine is in your neck area.
Yeah, yes, I probably should have emphasized that. I had to have that removed because of that reason. It was causing my arm to go numb. And another rare thing that can happen with cervical ribs is that instead of your artery being deep inside your shoulder where it's supposed to be, when you develop, it can be pushed to the surface of your neck. And so my artery was on the surface of my neck for the first 16 years of my life. So that surgery was supposed to take 2.5 hours, and it actually took 4 hours. And my poor family knew I was having this very, very serious procedure. They were not told that like everything was fine, that they just were left in the dark for that hour and a half. I am actually a triplet. My sisters were also 16 at the time, so that was very difficult for them to deal with, just like the hour and a half being left in the dark. And then, so when I got out of surgery, they swapped they were switching my IV because I couldn't move my right arm, since that's the shoulder that it was removed from. They swapped my IV from my left arm to my right arm, which was smart because I couldn't use my right arm and it was inside my elbow. Just a bit uncomfortable to move. So I woke up when they were switching it. So I woke up before I got any sort of pain relief.
Oh, no.
Yes. After getting a rib sawed off my spine. So that was a very, I'm like kind of finally processing the trauma with that. 10 years later, I'm actually hitting the 10-year anniversary of this surgery next week not next week, maybe a week and a half away. No, next week on the 25th is my 10-year anniversary.
Oof.
But when I woke up, it was basically the pain in like on that side of my spine was so bad that every time I took in a breath, I could not breathe or scream because that would make the pain worse. And all I kind of remember was the pain and several nurses having to hold me down and trying to like reason with me coming out of anesthesia to stay still and not hurt myself. My shoulder still has a lot of issues. I think it is probably because of that. And I think they just didn't know that, like, my anesthesia was wearing off at that point because the surgery was longer than it was supposed to. Also, I have been told that it's harder to get me asleep because of my insomnia.
Interesting.
But maybe that was just because that was the time where it was like more of a Twilight situation. It might be different for like a more heavy duty anesthesia, but there's a chance maybe I could be a little bit more resistant to that. But that incident was so severe that my 7 other surgeries were nothing compared to that. So it was really hard to go through. And like, I do think of like that waking up from surgery. I think about that several times a day. It still lives with me, but it's bad, but it's made me tougher, made me handle my other surgeries very well. And so then my other surgeries were, when I was 18, I had a laparoscopic procedure to diagnose my endometriosis. And I had a feeling that I had endometriosis because I have people on both sides of my family that have it. I did a little bit of research, and I know you're not supposed to consult Dr. Google. I thought I had carpal tunnel, and when my arm was going numb, they did find that I had carpal tunnel. So they're like, you do have carpal tunnel, you're probably going to need surgery for that at one point. Let's take out the cervical rib first. And I thought my wisdom teeth were impacted. They were impacted. I thought I had endometriosis. I did have endometriosis. I thought my birth control was making my carpal tunnel worse. It was. So of course, I would never diagnose myself with something, but it does give me something to ask the doctor about, which I believe I heard the doctor in your first episode, which I loved, by the way. Talk about it can be good to like ask doctors about like stuff that learning a little bit more about what could be happening in your body is going to give you more information. And I think a good doctor is going to be very sympathetic to that. But so I had a cautery method endometriosis surgery, which of course I'm not a surgeon, but in the endometriosis community, we are very heavily on the side of excision is the best method to remove endometriosis. So instead of burning the scar tissue out, to actually excise it and cut it out. Endometriosis is basically when the lining of your uterus, the endometrium that is shed during your period, grows outside of the uterus. And on the outside of the uterus, on the ovaries, sometimes, often on the other organs as well.
Right.
So I've often said it's like my uterus is attacking my other organs. That's probably not very medically accurate, but, you know, when you describe it, it does sound a little, it aligns to a certain extent. So my, the proper method for the opinion for most victims of endometriosis is that they want to get it excised, and they've had a lot more pain relief getting it excised versus getting it cauterized. I had it cauterized during the procedure when I was 18, when I had it diagnosed. And I was very lucky. I was diagnosed with endometriosis very, very early in my journey. I was 18. I got my period very late, at 14. And that was when I started having the symptoms. So only taking 4 years to diagnose my endometriosis is pretty good. A lot of women I meet with it takes at least like 10 years, I think I've heard, is the average of how long it takes to get diagnosed with endometriosis.
Wow.
And so that, because it was the cautery method, I did develop some scar tissue, and I had to go to physical therapy and get a massage, not in like a fun, relaxing way, in a let's rip the scar tissue apart way. Ugh. So I've developed a very high pain tolerance at this point at 18. And when they did the procedure, it turned out that my left ovary was attached to my colon.
Oh my God.
So your colon that is always moving. And I felt like a yanking in my left ovary with the pain. And I had also had an ovarian cyst burst. And which those that have suffered with that, it is excruciatingly painful. Again, feel bad for my sisters who had to witness the whole thing of me screaming in pain. And I went to the doctor, and they tested me for a UTI. I'm like, I don't think this is a UTI. Like, I thought my appendix had burst, which I think something a lot of women with endometriosis can relate to is Googling, what side is your appendix on?
Oh, yeah. I cannot tell you how many times I've done that.
Oh, yes. And with PCOS too. Like, just a quick Google, what side is that on again? And then I'd heard the test of, like, you stick your 2 fingers into, like, your appendix, and if it hurts more when you take it out, that might be a myth. But I have done that to myself several times. I'm like, this isn't my appendix, right? And so, a lot of my pain was in my ovaries in that area. Not surprisingly, my left one was connected to my colon, but they took care of that. And then at this point, I had dropped out of college, which was an amazing decision on my part. And I decided to do cosmetology school. I don't do hair anymore, but I have no regrets in doing cosmetology school. But that was obviously a career not the best suited for having carpal tunnel. After I quit hair, I kind of came to terms with, okay, I was very delusional to think I could ever hold a blow dryer and shears above my head with my shoulder. My carpal tunnel actually wasn't the problem. It was my shoulder the whole time.
Oh, wow.
But I decided, I was told that I needed surgery for my carpal tunnel. My pain in my hands and forearms had gotten pretty bad. Most people with carpal tunnel, their side effects are like tingling in their hands. I had that like a little bit, but mostly it was like pain in my carpal tunnel, which is like the tunnel that holds some of the nerves to your fingers. So like where that was located, I had a lot of pain, like, and in my hand and forearm, also to do with my ulnar nerve because that was compressed as well. So when I was 18 and 19, I went ahead and had carpal tunnel surgery on both hands. And at the same time, they did one arm at a time, but they did my right hand and then they released my ulnar nerve in my elbow. They basically shaved the bone down because every time I bent my elbow, I was compressing the ulnar nerve. And so they shaved the bone. They shaved the bone in my elbow down so that it wasn't being compressed when I bent my elbow. So after I recovered from those surgeries, I was like, I wanted to do them before I went to cosmetology school because I didn't want to face getting out of cosmetology school, being ready to enter the workforce, and then having to take a break from that to get surgeries, and then like recover from those surgeries, then find a job doing hair.
Right.
I wanted to start cosmetology school with a blank slate when it came to my hair. So I started cosmetology school in 2019 and finished it over Zoom, which was very difficult to, cosmetology school over Zoom is very difficult, but I did it. I got licensed. I had to drive to, I'm from Tallahassee, and I had to drive to Gainesville to get my license because there was not enough spots in the testing centers, because we went to the same testing centers that like med students and everybody who needs to get a license went to. And so they had a very limited amount of spots, and everybody still needed to get their license. People were protesting in the street because they wanted a haircut. And so me and a bunch of other of my classmates just drove to different cities to get our license. As long as we were still in the state of Florida, it was fine. So I got my license, and then I made 400. I'm a big sewer. I've been sewing for 17 years. No, I take that back. 15 years. I started at 11, and I'm just turned 26. So I made about 400 masks for free.
Wow.
Or no, I made 400 masks. I distributed the first 300 during protests for free.
Wow.
And then I sold and just gave out. I think I probably gave out more, closer to 350 for free. And I was kind of trying to deny it, but I started wearing my wrist brace again. And my mother spotted it one day. I forgot to like take it off and hide it because I was still living with my parents at the time. Because I had to get so many surgeries, I was having to take off time and not work. So I wound up not moving out of my parents' house till I was about 23. And she was like, "Is your hand bothering you again?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is." So she's like, "We need to go see your surgeon." And so we did. And I remember what I said about I didn't want to, right after cosmetology school, have to take off time to get carpal tunnel surgery. Well, I got tested and my ulnar nerve was still compressed. And I was kind of given the decision of like, okay, you don't have to get surgery. And I asked him, like, well, is my nerve going to continue to sustain damage every single time I bend my elbow? And they're like, yes. And so I'm like, okay, cut me open. Because I'm an artist. I've pursued every artistic hobby I can get my hands on. And my priority in life is my hands. A lot of the decisions to get like carpal tunnel surgery and then an ulnar nerve surgery, and ultimately get 4 surgeries relating to my carpal tunnel and ulnar nerve issues was because I want to prioritize the health of my hands. I want to do my sewing and tiny detailed embroidery work when I'm in my 90s. I want as many years on my hands as I can get. And so I got the ulnar nerve procedure where instead of shaving down the bone, they actually cut a very long and I'm sorry, I shouldn't move the microphone. I'll use my left hand. They cut a very long incision in my elbow, and they relocate the ulnar nerve to the inside of my elbow instead of on the outside. So whenever I bend my elbow, it's not getting compressed. But it is funny because when I touch where it is in the inside of my elbow, I feel it on like the outside bend of my elbow because like the nerve like still thinks it's there, it's kind of trippy. But that was a very, very, very painful procedure. And I did it, then started doing hair, then quit doing hair because I realized I just went to cosmetology school because I didn't want to go to college. And now I'm in a career that I'm I very much like, and everything's worked out. And, I like having a cosmetology license. It's nice to save money on hair supplies. Yeah. And so at a certain point, I was told by my carpal tunnel, my neurologist and my neurosurgeon, I was told, when you get pregnant, your carpal tunnel will probably come back. It's not back, but your symptoms will come back, and then when you're not pregnant, it'll go away. And I'm like, okay, well, that's nothing to be concerned about because I'm never getting pregnant. I don't want kids. I don't want to be pregnant. I'm not getting pregnant. And they're like, okay, but when you get pregnant, and I'm like, you're not listening. I'm not getting pregnant. But when they told me that, I immediately asked, I'm like, okay, so I know that birth control, which I use to treat my endometriosis, my periods were so severe that I was recommended to, instead of taking like the placebo pills and having a period, I was recommended to skip those and just take birth control and not have a period at all, because my periods were so severe that it was better for my health to just not have them. Yeah. And not only was it horrible for my health, but also just so painful. And so I asked him, like, so I know that birth control works by tricking your body into thinking it's pregnant so you can't get pregnant. Could that be making my carpal tunnel why I've had, not only have had carpal tunnel symptoms so early, which isn't surprising considering all of the different artistic hobbies I've had over my life. It's not surprising that I got carpal tunnel so early, but having to have, typically people will have this procedure when they're like in their middle age, like 40s, 50s. Yeah. And the ulnar nerve surgery, I mean, having those like 2 years apart, you're supposed to get like a decade or two in between like the severity of those procedures. And so my case was very odd, but I was told, no, your birth control doesn't have anything to do with it. And I don't know what it was that caused me, like, months and months later, way after getting the surgery, to look up. And I don't regret getting the surgeries, because at the end of the day, if my nerves are getting damaged, I will get whatever surgery I need to keep my hands healthy long term.
Understandable.
Mm-hmm. My biggest priority are my hands and being able to make whatever I want. And so I Googled it, and sure enough, hundreds of articles about, maybe not hundreds, at least dozens of articles about carpal tunnel symptoms being worse from birth control. And so I told my mom, I'm like, I think I'm going to go off my birth control and just see. And I said, I'm like, okay, if I go off my birth control, if that helps my carpal tunnel, then I'm going to get a hysterectomy. Because in order to, what I was looking for, obviously, endometriosis is an incurable disease. Even when the only way to cure it is to, like, remove the ovaries. But it's very important that you keep your ovaries to balance all of your hormones. And certainly glad I got to keep my ovaries and that they were in good shape. Because if I couldn't keep them, then I would have to get on hormone replacement therapy. And we all know how that is at risk in our current day and age. So, and I'm grateful to still have my ovaries, even though, I mean, I still have endometriosis. But my goal was not curing my endometriosis. My goal was not having periods and not being on birth control. Mm-hmm. Because, and sure enough, I went off my birth control. My carpal tunnel symptoms they weren't like completely gone. They were still irritating and annoying, but enough to where I was like, yeah, no more birth control.
Yeah.
So I very quickly decided, and I knew that hysterectomy was my end game. I think a lot of people with endometriosis have made that decision. I know people that very much want to keep their uterus because they want to have children. I know people that want to have children are like, I'm in so much pain, I will just adopt. There's plenty of children that want homes, and people like me who don't want children and want to have a hysterectomy. I've never wanted children. I've known, but it is a major surgery. So I at first I wanted to procrastinate until 30, 35. I wanted to do it then. I knew I wanted to get a hysterectomy at some point, and the worse my endometriosis got, the worse the pain got, and realizing that my birth control was making my carpal tunnel so bad, that was an immediate, like, okay, time to get it. And again, I was like, taking a couple years or so, like, don't necessarily need to get it immediately. And then Roe vs. Wade got overturned. So that definitely kind of lit a fire in me of like, okay, because I had noticed the kind of dangerous shift that we've seen in America, and I kind of caught on to the fact that it was probably going to get worse and worse. So I'm like, okay, I need to get my health care as soon as possible before I can't get my health care anymore. So, and I had a lot of trouble. I was seeing a lot of older men for my endometriosis, and definitely a big regret. I should have been going to, like, younger women. And my gynecologist, he was against it, but he recommended me to an endometriosis specialist, and he said he's probably not going to want to do it. He's just going to want to do an excision method, and he's not going to want to give you a hysterectomy. I'm like, okay, well, he's an endometriosis specialist, so I'll drive an hour and go see him. And of course, not going to like name names or anything, but I went and saw him, and he said the most dangerous part of getting a hysterectomy is regret. And I'm like, you do realize we're talking about a major surgery. What about infection, death, complications with anesthesia? I left that really, really gutted. It was...
Yes, that is so inappropriate.
Yes. And also I've been telling people that I don't want kids forever, and many people have not respected it. And people seem to only really be able to empathize with others. I've noticed a lack of ability to listen to what somebody is saying and actually think about it. Whereas people just develop an opinion and run with it instead of actually listening to what somebody is saying and trying to see things from their point of view. It's not like I was a teenager saying, oh, I don't want kids, they're annoying. I was somebody who spent years working in childcare and in their mid-20s saying, I don't want kids. So at this point, politics getting worse and worse and worse because of the abortion bans, and I live in Florida. Things are getting very hard. Everybody's very, very scared. And so I decided, I'm like, okay, I will get back on birth control, even though it makes my carpal tunnel horrible, and I'll get a copper IUD as well. Even just like there was a time where with my endometriosis pain, I would stick like a hot water bottle in my sweatpants because I can't just have it on the outside of my sweatpants. I need to like literally burn my skin in order to, which is bad and I shouldn't be doing it, but I needed to like actually burn my skin because it wasn't relieving the pain. It was just distracting from the pain. I decide that I'll deal with that. And then I go to pelvic floor physical therapy. And that was where I made a TikTok years ago. And I said, I have a doctor's appointment and it's across the street from my local Books A Million. And so I was making a TikTok as a joke of like, however this goes is going to depend on how much I spend on manga. And so it was very painful. So I ended the TikTok with holding like an entire like $120 or maybe $200 box set of, I think it was like 28 books, like all in there. And I'm like, so it didn't go well, but now I have all of this that I get to read when I go home. That physical therapist, I told her about my experience with the surgeon telling me the most dangerous thing about a hysterectomy is regret. And she's been sending her patients. She's got a lot of endometriosis patients. She's been sending her patients to him. So she was very surprised to hear that. And so she recommended my surgeon who performed my hysterectomy. She told me to go see her. And I did that TikTok trend. I reused that same video and I said something along the lines of, she doesn't know it yet, but she's the horrible, painful appointment that she just had will lead her to be recommended to the surgeon who will finally give her a hysterectomy in 13 years of pain. No, more than that. Started at 14, 12, less. I'm wrong. I'm so bad at math. I apologize.
Oh, you're fine.
And then you commented, and I met you. It was lovely, and I'm so happy to be here. But yeah, so my surgeon, I told her, and I told my physical therapist and my primary care doctor that I was pursuing a hysterectomy. And my primary care doctor, who I no longer have because she moved to a different city, which was very sad.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. And I told her I'm actually pursuing a hysterectomy right now because of my endometriosis. My biggest goal is to remain off birth control. I am a straight woman, so if I want a relationship at some point, birth control is going to be an issue. And my other goal is to not have periods. And she was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I like almost cried because that's the first time a doctor had actually acknowledged that my logic here was sound.
Wow.
I'll briefly go over what my periods were like. So my periods were about 8 days long, and they came consistently a week early, like 7 days early. And I was definitely doing the math right because I double checked a million times. I'm like, am I counting wrong? And no, I was definitely doing the math right. It was coming 7 days early and it was lasting for 8 days. And I was in pain the entirety of my cycle, not just my period, but the periods were the worst. And so a really, really big issue was the blood loss. Again, getting into very TMI territory, but this is about health, so I'm going to be honest here.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I was losing so much blood. And recently I had my blood drawn post-hysterectomy, and the nurse taking my blood was like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? And she's like, your iron levels are great. And I'm like, oh, that's never happened before. And she's like, you were almost anemic. That hysterectomy must have really helped. And I'm like, I knew it. I knew I was losing too much blood. Because there was a lot of times I was concerned about fainting. And the pain was horrific. I have a high pain tolerance. I could deal with it. I don't like taking off work unless like I have to. And most people in that level of pain would have taken off work. I did not. But yeah, I was losing so much blood on top of being in so much pain. And so I felt faint a lot of the time. And I didn't have the time to be losing that much blood to like keep track of it. But I got a hysterectomy and my pain has not been this low since I was 14 years old. It has been absolutely life-changing. I used to have like a chronic illness cart is what I called it. I had like a little metal craft cart that I covered in stickers and I filled with all of my chronic illness stuff. I had a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of different heating pads and ice packs and stuff for my carpal tunnel and medications and Tiger Balm and all this different stuff. And it was overflowing with stuff. which I think this is, if you have a chronic illness card, I think this is a good one to put in there. I had a DoorDash gift card in there.
Nice.
Not to like shout out a brand or anything. I don't know if I can do that. But I had like a $25 one in case I was bedridden. That way I can just order food and not have to fix something. I never had to use it. But now that chronic illness cart is sitting next to me filled with fabric. So, because I don't need it anymore. I don't need a whole cart
That's amazing.
full of stuff to treat my chronic illness. So, yeah, I'm doing absolutely incredibly. It's funny, the most pain my endometriosis has ever caused me was 2 days before my surgery.
Oh, wow.
I joke my uterus, she knew. She tried to take me out with her. I was in bed shaking with pain. It was like a level 8, 9 pain. It was horrific. And then it is the worst period I had in my life. I was in so much pain. The day of my surgery, my surgeon, she was like, "So how are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm doing horrible because I'm on my period." And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. We're going to take care of that for you." And I'm like, "Thank you." And, you know,
Yes.
it's a scary thing doing major surgery. I also had everybody in my life, like above the age of 40, was like trying to talk me out of it. And well, at a certain point, like my parents were supportive, but so many people in my life were trying to convince me I would regret it. So hardcore, adamant.
Yeah.
And which is really messed up because I'm making this great choice not only for my life, but my quality of life. I'm making a choice to be almost pain-free. And people are trying to talk me out of it because of this societal expectation that women must become a mother at some point. And that was more important to people than my quality of life and everything I wanted for my future. I just in general don't want kids, and I understand somebody not being able to understand that. Well, I say that. I don't understand that. I always try to be empathetic towards people and understand their points of view and put myself in their shoes. So I can't understand that. But the chronic pain aspect of it, you would think that people would get that, and they didn't. And so it was honestly kind of nice that I was in so much pain because it was a good reminder of no matter what anybody says, this is the best choice for my life and my mental health and my physical health. And
yeah,
I'm not close to anemic anymore and I'm not in pain. But yeah, it was the day of my surgery, I'm like, put me under already. I'm in so much pain. So yeah. And the recovery, it was hard, but I've had worse recoveries with my first surgery. I couldn't bend over for 6 weeks. Basically, I could bend over. I could not bend over and lift anything. So yeah, and I recovered well. I'm doing incredible. I'm in like peak health. It's great. So yeah, that's like
awesome.
my story. I've been going on for like 45 minutes straight. So
if someone is listening and they're at like the beginning of a journey that's similar to what you've gone through, facing that chronic pain or going through endometriosis, what would you want them to know now so that they can advocate for themselves and get the treatment that they need?
First of all, learning about the excision versus cautery method of endometriosis is great. Knowing what endometriosis is also great because so many women have it and have no idea what is causing their pain. I've heard from a lot of people in the community of people they know they have it and they don't want to get the surgery to diagnose it because if they don't have it, it might not be covered by insurance. But it is genetic, so if you have a lot of it in your family history and your symptoms line up, there's a good chance you have it. And also, like, you can find ovarian cysts in ultrasounds. The only way to for sure diagnose endometriosis is by doing a laparoscopic surgery. My first laparoscopic surgery, they went in through my belly button and my hips. And for the my hysterectomy was also laparoscopic, and so they went in my belly button and my hips and one underneath my rib cage. And I had a partial hysterectomy, so I had everything but my ovaries removed. So I had my cervix removed, my uterus removed, and my fallopian tubes removed. They removed the fallopian tubes because it lowers the risk of ovarian cancer. And people with endometriosis are more prone to cancers in that area. So, so I've heard. Again, I'm not a doctor, so if a doctor corrects me, go by what they say. But I saw male gynecologists and surgeons, and I saw a female surgeon, and she said, she's like, okay, we do have to discuss regret. Because that is likely. And I'm like, not in my case. Not likely in my case. I'm like, I worked in childcare for years. I'm 100% sure there's no way I'm changing my mind. I told her my reasoning for not wanting kids. I told her my reasoning for having a hysterectomy. And she's like, okay, I have no problems doing a hysterectomy on a 24-year-old. And this is our first appointment. I'd gone to this appointment fully expecting to be patronized and disrespected. And I left after signing a consent form for a hysterectomy. It was life-changing. And when you're looking for a doctor, you want to look for somebody who listens to what you say and tries to think of a treatment that suits your case the best. You don't want somebody who's arrogant and ignores what you're saying. It is important that my surgeon, when she came in, she immediately apologized for making me wait. I'd been waiting 15 minutes. I waited for hours at doctors. Mm-hmm. And this instant acknowledgement of I've taken time out of my workday to be here, and sorry for being late. And I think she was in surgery too. I'm like, of course, I was 15, maybe 20 minutes, probably more like 15. And this instant respect of me as a person and my wishes and my struggles. So that was very important to kind of pay attention to that. One thing, unfortunately, that I've noticed a very, very big difference with when I go and see doctors is how I dress and present myself makes a huge impact, because I went to see a doctor, the doctors I've seen during my workday versus when I'm off, because I've gone to doctors in, sweatpants and no makeup and a messy bun, and I have not really been listened to and respected as much as when I go with my work makeup and in my slacks and a blouse and heels. I actually get taken seriously, as well as if I look super exhausted, if I don't look super exhausted. Unfortunately, that seems to make a big impact. I hate giving this advice, I will say. When I go to a doctor's appointment, I treat it like a job interview. And that's not right. I shouldn't have to do that. But has it yielded better treatment for me? Yes, I will say. Very important with everything I'm saying. I am a thin white woman. So take my advice with a grain of salt, because there are struggles with racism and fat phobia in the medical industry that, can't even begin to understand. So I do want to say that disclaimer with all of my advice.
I just wanted to say I'm so thankful that I found you on TikTok. I'm so grateful for you coming on the show and telling your story. It's amazing how much advice you have for people who are going through the same thing. That is so cool and helpful. So if there's anything you want to add before we sign off, I just wanted to give you that opportunity. If you'd like to promote anything or shout out anybody, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to promote, so I just want to just shout out endometriosis in general. It affects so many women and femme people and so many uterus owners, so it's very important to talk about. I'm not a doctor, so I didn't do the like most amazing job explaining everything, but I hope at the very least I brought some awareness to it. So please research it and talk about endometriosis. Let's talk about it more. Let's talk about period pain more and kind of normalize these discussions and make them not taboo, because it's important to talk about this stuff. Because if we talk about it more, it will lead more people to getting the medical attention that they need, and lead more research about endometriosis, because there is not enough. It's starting to get a lot more attention, thankfully, but I think it definitely deserves some more. And thank you so much for letting me ramble on and on about this. I've become a bit of a nerd when it comes to medical stuff and everything, which I suppose it's good that I'm nerdy about it if I have to go through it. And I'm very appreciative to meet you and to be on this podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to go ahead and hit stop here.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Abiding Hysteria. If this conversation has inspired you to tell your healthcare story, please reach out to me on social media at Abiding Hysteria or email me at abidinghysteria@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our efforts to tell these health stories, become a patron today for only $5 a month. You'll get access to completely uncut episodes a week before the cut versions are released everywhere, as well as bonus content and more. Our next episode will release on the first Tuesday of December. Can you believe it's going to be December already? And a week earlier on Patreon. So be sure to follow us at Abiding Hysteria to find out when it drops on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, please be sure to rate, review, and comment and share so that others can find us as well. It genuinely helps keep the show going. For those of you who celebrate in any way, I hope that you have a safe, peaceful, and as pain-free as possible holiday season this year and every year to come. Remember, when it comes to your healthcare, you deserve to be heard, understood, and most of all, believed.